So today we will actually look at schemas. First, we have to understand what is an SQL or a schema. So in SQL Server, a schema is a logical container. So it's a container that's used to group and organize database objects. So when I'm talking about database objects, I'm talking about tables, views, store procedures and functions as well. So they can help to manage and secure these objects by allowing database administrators to assign permissions at a schema level. So this can just make it easier to manage access to different parts of database without having to set permissions for individual objects. Now, just to keep it simple, um, imagine a big library that's just filled with lots of books, documents, maybe in magazines. So this library is like a database in SQL Server. Now, just to make it easy for people to find what they're actually looking for, the library is divided into different sections. Each section is dedicated to a specific topic or the type of a book, such as maybe fiction or science or history, and so on and so on. So in SQL Server, these sections are like schemas. Okay, it's just a way of categorizing our objects. So a schema in SQL Server is like a shelf or a section in our library analogy. So it's a way to organize and group the related things together, just like a section in a library might only contain science books, for example. So in a sorry, and the schema in the database might contain all the tables, the views, and other objects related to a specific part of a business or application. So just like maybe sales data or customer information. So when someone wants to find maybe a science book, they can go to the science section, right? Similar, when you need data about sales, you go to the sales schema. So the organization makes it easy to manage and find what you're looking for. Um, just like a library might be have rules about who can check out the books from a certain section, and like only teachers maybe, for example, can check out a reference books. So in SQL Server, you can also set permissions at a schema level, right? So this means that you can actually control who can access or change the data in each section or schema, okay, of your database. So in simple terms, a schema in SQL Server is a way to organize and protect the data in your database, making it easy to manage and use. Now, to create a schema, we can use create schema statement. Here's an example of how we can create a schema. So we're gonna add a new query here. First, we have to actually use the database that we created yesterday. I think it was my database. Oh, maybe I think I deleted it. So we can create a new database. We create a new database, and this database, maybe we can call it my demo DB or something like that. And then I'm gonna also use that database, my demo DB. Then we can execute. All right, so you have to just put go here. All right, so we have now a new database called my demo DB, and then you can see that it's actually created there, and then we're actually using the database. So there's a database that we can use, or we can create, or we can actually use to create our schema in tables. Now, talking about all right, now to create a schema, we're going to add a new query here, and then we will use create schema statement. Schema, I think my spelling is a little bit off. Schema, and then let's call maybe our schema sales. And then we execute that. Now we can check the schema if it's created successful by just refreshing our database, and then we can go through databases, and I'm gonna look for my demo. Here's my demo DB somewhere here. So the schemas will be under programmability, and then no, it's not programmability. I think it's under tables. Actually, no, it's under security. Sorry, I'm sorry. It's under security, and then schemas, and then we can see that we've got a schema called sales. So there is also default schemas that already exist. Like for example, if you just create a table without really specifying or creating a new schema, the default schema will be DBO. All right. So all database objects will belong to the default schema called DBO. Now, let's go and create a table or manipulate objects within a schema. So after creating a schema, we can actually create and manipulate data objects within the schema. So for example, we can maybe create under sales schema, we can create a new table by adding new query. So we can say create table, and then sales dot the name of the table is orders. So we basically saying we want to create the table in the scale schema called orders, and then maybe we're gonna have the order ID, which is an integer, primary key, and it's also an identity. And then we'll have the order date, which is an integer, sorry, it's a date type, and it's not null. And then we can have maybe the customer ID, which is integer, and we can maybe have an amount, which is going to be decimal. Then we can go ahead and create a table. Now we can actually refresh the database, and then just look at the tables, and then you can see that we've got a table called sales, sorry, that is called orders, that is under the sales schema. So we can even have like a HR schema or anything like that. So it's the way of organizing the data object. So if we look at the columns there, then we can see the different columns that we've actually specified in that schema. Now, suppose we want to change something on the schema, we can use alter schema statement in SQL Server to transfer what we call a securable, like a table or a view or store procedure from one schema to another within the same database. So these can be particularly useful for organizing and managing permissions in your database, and when when you are restructuring your database objects. Now, suppose we have two schemas like new sales and HR, or let's say, yeah, let's say we've got two schemas, sales and HR, and a table named employee details. So that you mistakenly created under sales schema. So you want to transfer this table from HR to the, I mean, transfer it from sales to HR. All right. So what we need to do is to create those schemas first, and then before we can continue, before we can actually do the transference. So we can go and say create schema sales. Oh, we already have sales, right? So let's create HR, create schema HR. So we create a new schema called HR because we already have the sales schema. Let me just zoom in a little bit for you here so that you can actually see. So we create a new schema called HR. All right, let's go ahead and create a table under sales called this. So we're going to call this table employee details. So we create table in the sales called employee details. And we're going to have the employee ID, which is an int, and it's also a primary key. It's also an identity column. And then maybe we're going to have first name, which is an varchar. All right, so we will talk about different data types later on. And maybe we have last name, and then perhaps we have position. Maybe let's type correctly. So we have position, and it's also an varchar. Let's just make it the field size 50, and then maybe the last one will have a department in varchar. Let's make it 50. All right, then maybe we can also insert some data in the table. Just want to zoom out a little bit here so we can insert some data. So we can insert into sales dot employee details. So let me just separate this so that I can get so we have first name, and then we have Just gonna close my Object Explorer so that we have a full window there. And then we have perhaps last name. And then we have a position, and then we have sales. Sorry, then we have a department. And then the values, you say we've got John. So John is a manager. And then the department is sales. And then let's insert another one, which is Jane. Smith. And then maybe this one is sales representative. And then sales, also working on the sales department. All right, then we can actually finally select all from sales dot employee details. Employee details. Execute. Then you can actually see that I've got these two records in the sales department. Sales schema, which is in the employee details, John and Jane, and their positions, and then the department they represent. Now, what we want to do is we want to alter the schema or to change the schema. So the alter schema statement in SQL Server is actually used to transfer a secureable or like a table or a view or a stored procedure. So we've got two schemas here. We've got HR, then we also have sales. So what if we made a mistake and then we wanted to transfer the table employee details to HR, since it's supposed to belong to HR. So we can alter the schema from one schema to another within the same database, of course. This can be particularly useful for organizing and managing permissions as well in your database. So we've already have two schemas, which is HR, and we have the schema sales. So now what we're going to do, we're going to add a new query here, and we will alter. Now we're going to transfer the table employee details from sales to HR. So we will type the alter. Excuse my spelling. So that's alter schema HR, and then transfer sales dot employee details. Employee details. Now, we can select just to check if we still have, so we can select from sales dot employee details. Now, if we execute, then we actually get an error. It says invalid object name, employee details, because the table is no longer in sales. So it should be in HR. So if I were to change this, I'm going to just quickly comment this one out. And this time we're going to select from HR, and then we execute. Then we have our table there. Right. So I think it's something that you must just keep in mind. The HR employee details is now under HR. Sorry, the employee details table is now under HR. So before transferring objects, make sure that there's no conflicts, like naming conflicts in the target schema. So the user that is executing the alter schema command needs to have all necessary permissions to transfer the object between two schemas. And then this command cannot be used to transfer schemas between different databases. It's only applicable within the same database.